everybody, and welcome to the 11th Shakin, Not Stirred. I cannot believe it is 11 already, but here we are. We are in the grasp of the late 70s with today's James Bond film. But before we get to that, I am joined tonight by my amazing co-host, Adam. How are you, dude?
I am excellent. Thank you for calling me amazing.
Well, we've known each other a while now, and I still don't know anybody who knows as much about movies pre-1960 than you do. And I know a lot of people. So that's pretty a good feat right there. They want you on their side if we are doing a trivia contest of pre-19. Well, all movies generally, you're a maestro in the film department, which to me, back when I was in middle school, that's what made you amazing, dude. So thank you for joining.
Well, thank you. You're very sweet.
I gotta pump you up, man. That's all we got in this world. Movie talk and talking more awesome movie talk. And speaking of movie talk, before we get to Moonraker, you watching anything cool this week?
Since we've talked last, so I guess the last 2 weeks, I went and saw Tron Ares.
Ooh.
And I'll tell you this. I mean, it's obviously not as good as the first one. I don't think anyone thought it would be. But there are some nice throwbacks to the first one. And what I mean by that is that some of the filming they did was very like 1980s technology that kind of made it look like the original Tron in like one scene. The sound in it is unbelievable. Like really, whoever the sound editor was awesome in that film. The music was cool too. And it was a lot better than that pile of shit second one they put out. So I didn't like the one at all, obviously. So it was pretty good. Easy to follow, pretty compelling characters. It does not feel like the run times. I forgot. It was like, I don't know if it was an hour or it was 2 hours or exactly what it was, but it went through pretty quickly. Jared Leto was good. It was cool. I liked it. And then I went and saw, it was a 40th anniversary of St. Elmo's Fire. So went and saw that. And that's a movie that you can look at it two different ways. One, it hasn't aged well, which it hasn't. It's kind of a lot of cringy things in it. But also, like a lot of James Bond movies from, the late 60s and the 70s, doesn't matter what it's a fun movie to watch. So you just go there to enjoy yourself. You know what you're getting into, and that's that. Other than that, I've been watching a crap load of Twilight Zone episodes on Pluto. It's basically what I've been doing.
That sounds, honestly, crap load of Twilight Zone episodes is very amazing. And also very amazing is go to see St. Elmo's Fire. I'm always I think I've talked to you about this before. I like The Big Chill a lot, those ensemble type films. But as you stated, sometimes they do not age well. It's cool you went and saw it.
Yeah, it didn't age well because a lot of some of the stuff that happened in it, because it's a very 80s, and that movie, like, you can tell, I've said this many times before, there's no confusing what era that movie was in. I mean, it's 80s. You can't mistake it for anything else with what it is. But if you look at all the characters in that movie, I don't know, like, kind of all reprehensible in their own ways. So, like, there's like I said, a lot of cringy things that, like, some of the, especially Emilio Estevez, the way he, like, stalks Andy McDowell's just, they make it look like it's some cute, endeavor he's on, like some, like, he's crushy. Dude, yeah. I forgot all about the part where he goes and sees, like, Andy McDowell's, like, roommate. He's trying to, like, he's, like, beating on the door to get in, ringing the bell. And then she's, like, yelling, like, what do you want? He's like, you better tell me or I'm not going to be responsible for what I do to you. That shit like that. I was like, my God, man.
Yeah, that's a different time right there.
And like Rob Lowe, he's like trying to force himself onto me more and stuff.
Yeah, I thought of Rob Lowe immediately when you said that.
Yeah, and then like this is what I was talking to my fiance about. I was like, at the end, when she's like having her breakdown, like he's the one that like knocks the door and he's the one that she opens the door for. It's like, that dude just almost tried to rape you and you threw him out of a car. At his own house where his wife is. It's just a lot of stuff like that. And but still, like I said, it's one of those, it's a fun watch. It's a good time. And I'm glad I went and saw it because it's one of those movies I've never seen in the theater because it came out when I was 4 years old. So I was like, I'm totally down to see it. So we went and saw it.
Sadly, since the last time we have spoke, Diane Keaton has passed away. When you think Diane Keaton, where do you think some of her best movies?
Her best movie, and Mike Griffith will agree with me, is Town and Country. I'm kidding, but it's,
I was like,
I just
wow.
I tried to stay serious for a second with that.
I know
That
you did. You did a good job. I liked
no,
it.
him and I absolutely just have this weird thing for Town and Country with Warren Beatty, Gary Shandling. It's just awesome. Anyway, nah, you think of obviously you think of things like Annie Hall and the Godfather movies. I was never I respected Diane Keaton as an actress. She was very good at what she did. Um, I never saw the sex appeal of Diane Keaton. I just never thought she was that appealing in that sense. But as an actress, I have a lot of respect for her, and she was in some big films. And yeah, it kind of sucks that she died. Um, but hey, man, I mean, it seems to be the trend all the time. I mean, these people that we were watching when we were young, like the first times, the Godfather films now. So a lot of people from those movies that were made in the 70s, early 80s, even like late 60s and so on, a lot of those actors are passing away now. Obviously, like Gene Hackman was probably the biggest one, I would say, this past year. So, but it keeps happening. It's going to keep happening, and we're going to keep having these conversations about, you know, people passing away because they're getting up there, whether it's 70s, 80s, or even, some of them are even younger. And it's not shocking, but at the same time, it's kind of sad as a movie fan, but it's something we're obviously, like I just said, we're going to be discussing quite often because it's going to keep happening. It's the way it goes.
One of the first movies I've ever seen Diane Keaton in was a movie my mom watched a lot called Baby Boom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to watch that movie and be like, wow, she's super hot. You know what I mean? That movie
Just
is
never found her that. I mean, I don't
I
get
mean,
what
honestly, if you've ever seen 19 I know you probably have, 1975 Sleeper with Woody Allen, some
yeah.
of her mid-70s stuff, she's a little more attractive than when she cuts her hair into the bobby, but the thing about it is she played the roles I think that she was called for in a pretty good way. I love her scene, the way she says all that to Michael in the second Godfather. "It
Oh,
was
when
an abortion, Michael, an
yeah,
abortion, and I had it." I like to curiously find out how many times they shot that scene, but,
dude,
again,
but
as
the
you
thing
just
is about that, like, I think he was even better in that scene. The way he just stares at her like that, the way his
oh, yeah, well,
eyes, dude,
that's
that's like
why
the most intense you're going to see Al Pacino until you get later Al Pacino,
I like when she
who was
comes
like
back to
yelling
the
all the time.
house a little later, and he sees her in the doorway, and he just walks up to the door and shuts it right
Yes.
in her face, and you see her
Right in
like,
her
"Oh,
face.
ah," like, run away. I like
Yeah,
that.
right before the door shuts, you like, "Ah," yeah, but yeah, it's like she was, like I said, she was a great actress. I'm not gonna take that away from her at all. But a lot of people, I remember I've seen a lot of articles saying, she was like, oh, she was, one of the most attractive actresses in the 70s. And I was like, I don't think she was, but that's just me.
Hey, everyone,
And it
hey,
could be wrong. Everyone has their
everybody's
opinion
got
on that.
everybody's got
Yeah.
different tastes. But, let's get to our main attraction this evening. We've got Moonraker, the 11th James Bond film. Why don't you catch us up to where we are right before Moonraker?
So we just finished up a couple weeks ago talking about The Spy Who Loved Me, which is my personal favorite Bond film. And Roger Moore has now cemented himself as a very, very well respected, I guess, James Bond now. He's well received. Fans aren't clamoring for Connery as much. There's still going to be people out there saying, Connery's the only James Bond. He's a real James Bond, and yada, yada, yada. But Spy Who Loved Me really saved the franchise. After The Man with the Golden Gun kind of bombed, they were at a crossroads, and Spy Who Loved Me kind of like brought it back to the forefront. And now they're ready to do another movie. But if you remember at the end of Spy Who Loved Me, it said James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only, which was what was really originally intended. However, between when that movie was made, 1977, and when this movie was made, or not made, but just came out in 1979, Star Wars had come out. A New Hope had come out. You've had seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The space, space was a big deal. Those were big movies, big box office films. So they wanted to do something. They wanted to kind of piggyback and play off of that. So they went with an old Ian Fleming novel, Moonraker, which this film has nothing to do with the novel. It has absolutely nothing to do with the novel. They rewrote the whole thing to kind
Just
of
took the
fit
name
in the
pretty much.
time. So, which has happened before, but not quite to this extent. Like this was unrecognizable from the book at all. So they have James Bond going. This is peak zany Roger Moore James Bond. It's
Good.
it's awesome.
It
I
is.
don't know if you can say peak because once it hits here, it kind of stays that way. Not for your eyes only so much, but like when it gets to Octopussy and A View to a Kill, it doesn't let you down when it comes to the zaniness and stuff like that, the campiness. So, but
Nope.
this takes it up a notch from The Spy Who Loved Me. But it's really, if you think about it, it's pretty much the same story. So in Spy Who Loved Me, you had the villain Stromberg wanted to basically start a nuclear war to destroy pretty much everyone on the surface and have his own, you know, basically life under water, because that's where he basically identified as himself as a person under the sea. And in the beginning of the movie, you had, a submarine being hijacked and stolen. In this film, you have a villain who is trying to destroy all life on Earth and basically do like a master race type deal and repopulate the planet with his own, basically his own, who he feels are the fittest and best of humans. And he takes them up into space, kill all life on Earth, and then repopulate. Now, obviously, if you really think about that, the obstacles of achieving something like that are even more ridiculous than the film itself. Of all of things that would be shut down, like you couldn't just go back and immediately repopulate. Who knows what would happen if things would, like, nuclear reactors would melt down. All and then someone
Hey,
brought up
look.
one thing I heard before was like, what do you do with all the dead bodies once you go back?
Yeah, that too.
There's going to be these billions of dead bodies just laying there. Like, what are you going to do with all of them? Now, the way he had it, like all the animal life would stay okay. What they basically with the orchid, which comes in later, they developed this whole thing to where it could poison all the humans on Earth, but not the animals. And so James Bond he has to stop this. The beginning of it kicks off with the hijacking of a shuttle. This was a big deal back then because this was when the shuttle program basically first started. This movie was actually supposed to coincide with the first shuttle launch of the Enterprise, but it actually, so that's kind of why they had the shuttle on there. But the shuttle launch itself got delayed a couple years, so it didn't launch when this movie came out. But they got basically the shuttle itself they got right. So that's exactly pretty much what a shuttle looks like. So that was kind of cool to see a shuttle before you actually saw a shuttle for real be launched. And anyway, it gets hijacked at the beginning, and James Bond gets put on it. And this is the case, and it takes him to various places around the world. California, Rio, Venice, and then eventually, or California, Venice, Rio, then eventually space. So James Bond is going to space. And he gets there. It's fun. It's ridiculous, but it's a good time, I guarantee, if you watch it. And the budget of this movie, was about $35 million, but it grossed over $200 million worldwide, which is the first Bond movie ever to do that. So however ridiculous you think this movie may be, people received it very well and went back and saw it more than once, because you don't get 200 and some odd million dollars worldwide without people on, doing repeat views of the film. And this aspect ratio on this, when they filmed it, was, wide. It was 2.39 to 1. It was a widescreen, wide scope, because obviously you're going to space. You need to film it that way. And it's got a fun opening sequence, much like The Spy Who Loved Me. And you see Bond in a plane. After the shuttle gets hijacked, you see Bond in a plane. And of course, he's with a girl. And the girl turns on him, points a gun at him. And this is part of that sequence after Jaws pushes him out, which then this is something my brother's brought up before. And I've seen it before brought up too. Like, That's a tiny plane they're on. Where the hell was Jaws hiding on this plane?
I never thought of that. That's a good one.
And then the girl who points the gun at him, you see her with the parachute, but you never see her like leave the plane. So I don't know if she jumped out after they did. Like they never really explain what happened to the girl. The guy comes in and like shoots the instruments, like that's going to take a plane down, and it don't just damage the instruments. Apparently, it just takes the whole plane down. And then he kicks the guy out the door, and then Jaws comes behind and just pushes him out. What sucks about this, and I was thinking about this, it would have been cool if Jaws wasn't even in this opening sequence, because it would have been nice to, like, at the point where Drax is looking for a replacement, and he's on the phone, and he says it very much like he goes, "Oh well, if we can get him," he doesn't refer to him by name, and then you see him walk through that airport. That'd have been a great first reveal for Jaws.
Yeah,
but did it this way, and like I said, it works. It's okay. They brought Jaws back because fans loved him. And he wasn't nearly as dark in this film. He was more of he was a henchman. He was a scary henchman, but he's also comic relief. Kids loved him, so they wanted to bring him back. That's why
this is the first time they're bringing. Is this the first time they're bringing back a henchman back to back? Right.
This is the only time they brought a henchman back. A henchman, at least. I mean, there's been recurring characters, but this is the only time they brought a henchman back, and that's because he was so popular with everybody. Like I said, kids loved him, so they didn't kill him off. They didn't, and they turned him, as in the wrestling terms, he went from a heel to a face at the end of this movie. He went good, but it's ridiculous. But the great thing about this was all this. So this whole stunt when they jumped out, this is a free fall shot, and they did this in one take. And they did all the filming they needed. You can see the stunt doubles for like Jaws is pretty obvious. The Roger Moore one's a little bit better, but the one for Jaws you can tell is not like Jaws. It's a normal sized human being, not gigantic like Richard Kiel. So, but I mean, he has some ridiculous things like once his parachute doesn't open, he starts like flapping his arms. Then he falls into the circus tent and everything, and then it goes into the Moonraker open, which is another Maurice Binder open, which is synonymous with like Roger Moore films, like later Roger Moore films. You see Jaws there with his girlfriend he finds in the film, but who's a complete opposite of him, small blonde girl. And but the Maurice Bender opens great. The Moonraker theme is cool. I'm sure we'll get the music of that in a second. But this was a big film, and it did very well, no matter how ridiculous it was. And I mean, I don't know. What did you think of? How long ago did you first see this film?
Well, I'll go back to, let's just say, 5th and 6th grade when you'd go to the video store. And to me, I mean, the video store to me was just great because you could walk around and just stare at all these boxes and wonder what the movies were about. And a lot of them, of course, my parents probably have seen them, so I could say something. I'd go to like the James Bond section because they're like all in a row, and Moonraker always, something about it always just kind of drew my interest. I don't know why. I think it's because when I thought James Bond and all these other covers, he's like in these exotic locales. This movie, he's like going to the moon. What's this about? And honestly, I didn't ever watch it. I just always thought that. And then I met you, and you were like, gotta go back and watch the Roger Moore movies. They're great. And this one was probably my favorite. This one and the last one. I mean, I also like the one with Christopher Walken because it's ridiculous too.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that later. This though, it's just a cool movie, man. It is. Movie.
It's so much like The Spy Who Loved Me, like the story and everything. And it shows Hugo Drax right there, the main villain. I'm actually, as I set up, this is my Moonraker shirt. Actually, my brother bought.
Cool. That's very cool.
So this is the opening sequence of Roger Moore's actually coming down in his parachute. He actually hijacked off somebody else because when he got kicked out of the plane, he was doing a straight free fall, caught up to the guy with the parachute, got the parachute off of him, and then Jaws comes after him, the whole thing. But this is a shot you see when it goes into Maurice Binder's opening theme for Moonraker.
Oh, cool.
And it was, and this movie was directed by Louis Gilbert, again, the same guy who directed The Spy Who Loved Me. And like I said, the formula is pretty much the same. I thought the editing and filming for the most part of this movie was actually pretty good. There's been some bad ones. There's been some really good ones. As zany as this one is, I thought it was pretty well filmed, well edited, good shots, um, good second unit direction. I think John Glenn, who did later Bond films, was a second unit director. I have to look at it. He was a second unit director, so his establishing shots were really good on this movie. So, but the formula is exactly the same, and the cast was cool, which I'll get into that in a second. Um, but after this, it kind of like once this film was done, they kind of went back to a more serious tone with Bond. Not too serious, but like Fear Eyes Only was more like a was more like On Her Majesty's Secret Service, or more like The Living Daylights, that type of movie.
Hmm.
So, and some people like that, and some people don't. A lot of people say it's the best Roger Moore movie because it's more of a actual Bond movie. I like this type of Roger Moore movie better because I identify as Roger Moore as with something like this, and he's perfect for something like this. The cast, though, in this movie, unfortunately, this was the last film for Bernard Lee as M, because Bernard Lee passed away a few years later. So he was replaced in Fear Eyes Only, and he had actually had more screen time in this film, and some good back and forth with Bond in a couple different scenes. You had Jeffrey Keane as defense minister, who is back now. You had Walter Gotell as General Golgo. He was back. So like those guys, like I said, were kind of synonymous with the Roger Moore Bond years, and I think they were kind of good additions as supporting characters. Who you see right there is Michael Lonsdale. Actually, he's a French actor, and you can probably say I can't say his name really well in French. It's like Michael Long. I forget how you say it in French, but either way, everyone refers to an American as Michael Lonsdale, so that's what we're gonna do. But he was in movies like Day of the Jackal. He was eventually in Chariots of Fire. He was in a couple other movies, and one of the movies I'm going to bring up later, which is kind of an interesting trivia piece. And this was the last movie that Ken Adam was a production designer for.
Hmm.
And I thought in this film he had pretty incredible set pieces, especially like Drax's command center, um, the orbiting space center, and Drax's in Venice. He kind of had that giant ballroom type place where that lab was in. I mean, he had some pretty cool places, like pretty cool scenery and things. Like I said, he's been doing the production design for Bond forever, and he just keeps going bigger and bigger and bigger. That space station was like the most expensive set like ever built, and they kept breaking their own records. Like it's just like I said, it was just always bigger, bigger, bigger with them. So, but Michael Lonsdale was pretty cool. He was a little more, he was like a lot like Stromberg, real low key, real monotone. Didn't really change his voice except for maybe once in this film. But he's a pretty dark character, and he killed people, or had people killed in pretty dark ways. Especially the girl that he ended up, having dogs chase her down and pretty much rip her apart.
That wasn't good.
No, that was not good. But I mean, and any megalomaniac who's willing to murder everybody on Earth, it's very Hitler-esque and the whole master race type thing. But he was good in this, and like he was a good villain. You believed he was a villain. His death scene was kind of but it was so cool because you kind of knew where it was going to go. Once they're in space, you kind of knew how this dude was going to be dispatched in a way. So he was good, and the main Bond girl in this film was Lois Chiles,
Okay.
and she was originally offered the role of Anya Amasova in Triple X that Barbara Bach got in Spy Who Loved Me. So she was supposed to be. She actually got offered that role, but turned it down. And she was in. She was also in Death in the Nile with Peter Ustinov. She was in The Great Gatsby with Robert Redford and Mia Farrow. Later on, she was in Broadcast News, Speed 2, which you might want to forget. And she was actually had a cameo in like Austin Powers. She was the wife of the guy who
I
got
wish,
steamrolled in Austin Powers.
I
So
wish
she
we
had
were
a little
friends
part.
back in the summer of Speed 2, because I went on a little run, because when I left the movie theater, I was convinced myself that it was better than the first one. And you probably were like, you would have been like, shut up, man, it's not. But Um, Now, she's a pretty good looking lady.
She was great. She had
Yeah,
just gorgeous
yeah,
eyes, very
yeah,
intoxicating eyes.
yeah.
The girl you see here with Roger Moore is Corinne Cleary. Corinne Cleary. She's also a French actress,
Oh,
and
French.
she played. She was played a supporting role in the California scenes of this film, and she's the one of them get ripped apart by the dogs because she didn't really help Bond, but she kind of was with Bond when he went into Drax's office to get those blueprints. Um, so she was in that. Um, Other than that, you had basically, let's see, the only other girl was Manuela. She was in the scene in Rio de Janeiro. That was Emily Bolton, and she was in it for a few minutes. That's the one who Jaws like lifted up out of that festival, that Mardi Gras-esque festival. You're like, this girl's so tiny, and this dude Richard Cummins like lifts her up. He's gonna bite her neck before Bond jumps down on her. It just looks so funny because he was like picking up someone like that looked like they were like, this big. Because Richard Kiel is, you can see right there is just a
That's
giant of
right.
a. But I don't know much else Emily Bolton was really in. She was obviously a very good looking girl, but she wasn't in much else. So she had a part in it too. I mean, Bond pretty much with the girl he's making out with that turned on him in the first part had like 4 different girls in this movie. So good for Roger Moore. That's my guy.
Yeah.
So
He's
and then
yeah,
obviously
he's doing
you had Lois Maxwell coming back for this one as Miss Moneypenny, but at this time she was really starting to kind of like look her age. Like she didn't look like she was in her 40s or 50s. She kind of looked like she was your grandmother who was like 70 at this point. So the Bond Moneypenny flirting was kind of like toned down quite a bit
I mean,
because
would you say I mean, you gotta say that Moore's Bond had probably some of the best women, right?
I would say so. Between
You got Live and Let
Jane
Die.
Seymour,
Yeah,
Jane Seymour was unbelievable. You had Barbara Bach.
yeah.
Um, you had Maud Adams in 2 different movies of 2 different characters. I don't really find her, she was all right. But Britt Eklund in Man with the Golden Gun. I mean, she was, I think, also a model as well.
Yeah.
You had Carol Bouquet in Fear Eyes Only, and then you had Tanya Roberts in View to Kill. So yeah, he had some good, and then the supporting Bond characters, like I said, Corinne Cleary,
Yeah,
she was
right.
gorgeous. I mean, there were some good looking girls, and Roger Moore deserves every bit of that. But yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, when you break all these characters down, we've talked about the backstory. I'm gonna be really honest with you. The one thing that I guess I wish I would have thought of when I looked at that box back in 6th grade was the fact that you said of all these other space movies that came out at the time, and that's why they did it. That would have drove me to probably watch it back then and probably would have got into Bond sooner because it would have been some connection. I just thought it was like him, honestly. I just thought it was him hanging out at a space station the whole time. I'm like, this doesn't sound like fun. But
no,
then,
and it doesn't
but
really
then when
happen
you
until
got Richard Keel in it, it's a blast. It's a
it
blast of
doesn't.
a
He
film.
doesn't even go into space at all until the 3rd act.
Yeah.
Um, he meets Lois Childs, and this is, I mean, this is probably my favorite Bond name. I know you got Pussy Galore. Pussy Galore is more. I'm going to be careful how I say this. More in your face,
Yeah.
but Dr. Goodhead, Holly Goodhead,
Really good.
to me is just like,
Pretty
if you
good name.
can't have a name like Pussy Galore, you have Dr. Goodhead.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when he first meets her, of course, Bond being the misogynist he just looks at her and he's like, I'm looking for Dr. Goodhead. And then Lois Child's like, oh, you just met her. And he looks at her up and down. He's like, oh, woman. He just says that. But they made her be a strong female character who was obviously very smart. She was a trained astronaut. She can talk and go back and forth with him. So she wasn't like a weak damsel in distress. She was a couple points where, during the film, but she had a very prominent role in the ending. Like she played more of a prominent role in the conclusion of this movie and the resolution than Barbara Bach did.
Ooh,
Because Barbara Bach basically got kidnapped by Stromberg and was taken prisoner for the last part of the film, and Bond has to go save her. Lois Childs, Dr. Goodhead, she is a big part of how they stop the whole plan from happening. She's not there, nothing happens, because she's the one that's a trained astronaut, can apparently fly a shuttle, because without her, you can't make it. So her character was actually pretty good, I thought. There's a couple points where he did save her, but she was actually a CIA agent that was trained as an astronaut in the film. So they kind of made her in a way that Barbara Bach was in Spy Who Loved Me. Not so much Bond's equal, I guess, but like on the same level as him, and can do things that he obviously, like, this is the first film where the female character can do things that he cannot. So that's the first time we've pretty much seen that out of a female lead or a female character, period, in a Bond film. So that was kind of cool. And but what's also I like about this one is the music in this film. A lot of people don't like it. I like it a lot. It's Shirley Bassey comes back for a third, and it's her final one, but she did the theme for Goldfinger, and then she did Diamonds Are Forever, and then she did this one. And they're all, Diamonds Are Forever, I can take or leave, but obviously Goldfinger is her most legendary one by far. But this one was also really good too. And with the Maurice Binder open and her song or singing of Moonraker, I thought it was very good. And they mixed the music in this movie very well. There were some pretty dark moments, like when Corinne Cleary's character is getting chased by the dogs in the woods. That's some very ominous music you're hearing. That has nothing to do with the film itself. It doesn't sound like Moonraker. It's just kind of very foreboding, dark music. And then when Jaws is coming towards Manuela in that alley when they were in that festival in Rio, it's also pretty dark as well. And the music kind of resonates. It's kind of what I remember from it too. When he has that costume on, the costume looks creepy too that he's wearing. He takes the head off of it. You're like, oh shit, that's Jaws. And he's coming down. You see she's by herself. He's got her trapped in an alley coming down. And you hear that it's almost like beating of like drums. And like it gets louder and louder as he gets closer. It's something you don't see in Bond movies. So I thought like that was pretty good how they kind of mixed that in here, along with the nice, very serene theme of Moonraker that kind of reflects its, space tone and everything. But I don't know. I mean, it's not the theme itself. I didn't think it was as good as Spy Who Loved Me, because I just love that song probably more than others. And like I said, the song itself stands on its own, like on a Billboard chart or something. But this is pretty good. But what did you think of that?
What I like the most about the Bond songs in general, I like anything where you line it up like a library and you got different stuff. Okay. You're talking about, I mean, Goldfinger's a legendary track. That's one of the more legendary ones. And you're saying to yourself, in late 70s, why not bring her back? I mean, why not? And let's see what happens. And it works for this one.
And they had big they have big artists doing the themes by this time.
Yeah. I mean, so let's imagine in this world of space, we also have the world of disco. And I'm not trying to be cheesy here, but imagine a world where like the Bee Gees sing Moonraker. You know what I mean? Like, that's not too far off when you think Duran Duran is a track later on down the line. So you say to yourself, going with Shirley Bassey was not even a safe bet for them, really, considering they could have gotten anybody. But they were like, you know what? Let's roll with it. Probably because the budget was so big everywhere else, they couldn't maybe go another way. I don't know.
But maybe, I don't know. They never really explained exactly why they did. I mean, at the end of the movie, though, when they're playing the theme again, you hear it's a more disco-esque theme at the end. They're going around the world, so they did mix it in because it was the movie. It was a product. It was a product of its time,
Yeah.
And you saw that in the opening of Spy Who Loved Me. It was kind of, you saw that kind of, heard that 70s type music.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it was still a product of its time, like anything else. But the theme itself, like, that's what's cool about Bond themes. They don't always stick with what era they're in. Like, nobody does it better. You can listen to that song and be like, man, that song was released in 1984, and I'd have believed you. It's not one of those things. Most of those Bond themes are like that. But there's an exception of very few probably that you could be like, okay, that's got to be this era. But between those and like Maurice Binder's opens, they're so unique to James Bond. And I
Now,
can't explain, like all these opens because they're all kind of a little bit different, but they're all kind of like lit the same, and the artistry's the same. He's got his own thing, and it belongs to Bond. And I think it really comes out in the Roger Moore films more than anything else. I love the Roger Moore opening credit sequences more than anything else.
now, before we go to your pictures here that you sent,
Mhm.
did they talk anything at this exhibit about the music, or no? They just kind of stuck to these type of things.
No, so it really wasn't a guided tour of anything.
Gotcha.
It was an
Just like a
exhibit.
bunch of specific
Yes,
little
you
pieces here.
paid, you got in there, and you kind of perused around and see what you wanted to see,
Cool.
basically.
That's
So,
awesome. Oh,
and I took, pictures of a lot of. There's a few things I probably didn't get, but all the stuff I really wanted to see and really wanted, I thought was, and I took all this stuff not knowing we would even do this podcast or this going to be part of any podcast. I just want it for my own,
oh, look at
for
that.
this,
You
for
were
this
on
podcast.
you were on assignment for something you didn't even know
Well,
you
that's
were a
something.
part of.
I did it for posterity purposes. I was like, hey,
Yeah.
I want to have this stuff,
Well, this is a cool photo right here.
Yeah, so that's one of the That's one the Moonraker. That's one of the space lasers. And it's kind of weird. Like you see his technology in this movie, you don't see it ever again in any Bond film. That's weirdly weird, but because they have apparently a space army already in this movie. It is kind of weird how they were like they did a launch at the end of the film, like this coordinated launch just on a whim. It takes months, years to like prepare launches. Now these guys like, oh well, we see it up here now. The radar has been unjammed. We can see it now. Yeah, we're gonna send someone up there. So they just did it immediately. But anyway, this is one of the space lasers they were using. I think the Drax people had these lasers. They had more. I don't know. Maybe the American troops had some of these too, actually. But this one, the space laser, had a really cool sound to it. You heard Q, or you saw one of them used when he meets Q in Rio, and but that was a pretty cool piece on this one. A pretty cool. I mean, let's look at it. It's a cool prop. That on the left is now on the right. That's from No Time to Die. That's later on. But on the left, that is one of the things Lois is like a folio, kind of like almost looks like a pocketbook in a way that Lois Childs had. That's when he figured out she was CIA. And he was like, this is standard CIA. I mean, I didn't realize that was standard CIA stuff that a female agent would carry something like that. But it had like a radio transmitter in it, and it shot out like darts. Like it was, but it was it was basically what he found in her when he met her in her hotel room in Venice. He picked that up and kind of examined it and kind of saw what it could do. So those are kind of the two props in that film that I wanted to make sure that I took pictures of.
Very cool.
The Roger Moore and Lois Childs, obviously. Yeah, I think Lois Childs is kind of an underrated Bond girl.
Yeah, I'd say
she was. I mean, she was pretty strong character. She's really good looking. And she, like I said, she in kind of a nod to the James Bond franchise, she had a little bit part, in Austin Powers years later. So.
Well, it also, I'll be honest with you, with all these guys who have played Bond, it's kind of refreshing to hear that, obviously everyone had fun time making the movie. I've never heard of a lot of negativity in the department of the Bond and the Bond girl on the Bond set. You know what I mean? So that's always refreshing.
It was, and people usually say, everyone loves Roger Moore. He's always a big gentleman and everything like that. It was always fun to film with. But yeah, the filming of this whole thing, no one really said much. The filming of this went pretty smoothly compared to some past ones. And they had really cool, like I thought some really cool locations. They went back to Venice again. They've been to Venice already a handful of times, but apparently they love going to Venice. But the sequences in Rio, especially on the gondola, when he's getting ready to fight Jaws. Now, Jaws jumping from one gondola to another is a thing. Like that is not so well edited. Like I talk about the editing in this film, the shots, that one was bad, but whatever, you suck it up and you move on. But
what kind of trivia you got?
Well, this movie was shot. One of the things I want to say is the shots that are supposed to be at Drax's compound in California, where he manufactures these shuttles. They were actually shot in the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, so that was kind of cool. They actually did shoot, you know, and they let him in there and gave him not whatever access, but enough access to really work well in the film. So Lois Maxwell, who plays Miss Moneypenny, who has played her every film, her daughter is actually one of Drax's perfect specimen girls in this film. And so she made a little cameo. She didn't really act or anything much after that, but that was kind of cool. Before Drax orders, or when he's ordering Bond and Dr. Goodhead to be executed, he tells her, he's like, your desire to become America's first woman in space will shortly be realized or fulfilled. And because at that point, no American woman has been in space. Now, back in like early 60s, like I think it was in 1963, Valentina Tereshkova, she was a Russian cosmonaut, female cosmonaut. She was the first woman ever in space. But at this point, 1979, there were no female Americans in space until Sally Ride, which was 4 years later in 1983. She was the first American woman in space. So it's kind of cool that they put that in the film, like, you know, they recognize there hasn't been a female in space yet. So he kind of mentioned your first, you know, your desire to be the first American woman in space will be fulfilled. Then you'll be dead. This is the final James Bond movie with the voice dubbing from Nikki van der Zyl. I've mentioned her in so many movies. She has dubbed voices from Dr. No all the way up through Moonraker. And she did Corinne Cleary's voice. And this was her last role, but her last time doing any voice dubbing. But I thought she deserved kind of a shout out because she was part of that franchise, much like Ken Adam was in the production design. So that's what kind of sucks about this. This is the last movie for Bernard Lee. This is the last movie for Ken Adam. It's the last movie for Nikki van der Zyl. Michael Lonsdale, who I mentioned as Drax, he was in the movie later on. He was in the movie Munich. And two Bond veterans are in Munich. Daniel Craig, obviously one of them, and Matthew Almeric. And he was the main villain in Quantum of Solace. He's also been in some Wes Anderson films as well. But
very cool.
That was kind of cool. And playing off of that, Michael Lonsdale was also one of 3 Bond villains in the movie Ronin, which I'm sure you remember that movie.
Oh yeah, it's a classic.
He was in that
car scene in that.
Yes. And Sean Bean, who was the villain in Goldeneye, was in that, and Jonathan Pryce, who was in Tomorrow Never Dies. So,
your favorite one?
Yes, my favorite Brosnan. No.
Die Another Day.
That one, but yeah, Die Another Day is.
I get him confused.
I was really happy.
Can't wait to get to that movie. That's what I got on my list.
God, yeah, I'm gonna need a drink for that one. But all 3 of them were in that film together. So that was kind of cool. You know, Michael Lonsdale, I think he passed away a few years, or 2015, 2016 or something like that. So, but he did a lot of French films, but like I said, he did some other movies, and he was in movies like that, you know, later on, well after Moonraker came out. Excuse me. Also there's a point in this movie that I thought was pretty cool towards the end when they're reporting, I think it's the Americans that are coming out of the space shuttle. You hear an astronaut leave the shuttle, and you see a voice comes over the comm and says, "Red Leader standing by," as kind of a shout out to Star Wars.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was kind of snuck in there, kind of, because they were wondering if people would kind of catch that, which I did not catch for a very, very long time. And the last thing I have is going back to the music in this. Now, in The Spy Who Loved Me, you had a couple things mixed in, like you had the Lawrence of Arabia theme when he was in the desert, kind of mixed into the song itself. And this one you had when he was hunting, the scene where Drax is kind of hunting like pheasants and Bond's with him, and Bond shoots that guy at the tree in one of the coolest Roger Moore moments, I think, in any Roger Moore movie. When he's like, you missed, and that dude falls out of the tree, and he's like, did I? And anyway, but for that, you hear like a horn in the background, and the horn is the first 3 notes to also Sprach Zarathustra from 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is a shout out to another space movie. And then the code he does to get into that Venice lab where that poison is being developed, if you hear the tone he hits when he hits the numbers, is a tone from Close Encounters.
That's cool too.
Like that, he does that a couple times.
That's
And
awesome.
then when he is going after Dr. Goodhead gets kidnapped and the ambulance and he escapes, and you see him go back to where MI6 is relocated in Rio. He's riding on that horse dressed as, it's kind of funny because he's kind of dressed as Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name character. He has a poncho and hat like that, but they're playing instrumentally, they're playing the Magnificent Seven theme as he's riding there. So all three of those, also Spark the Zarathustra, Close Encounters, and the Magnificent Seven theme all kind of made their way into that film.
Very awesome. That's some really good trivia there. Great movie. I mean, honestly, it's one of my favorites. I don't know which
It
one
is
is
a
mine.
good time.
It
That's
is.
what you, the
It is.
best way to explain it. Don't go in there
They
thinking
gotta
I'm
let,
going to see.
they gotta do this one at the movie theater. You definitely could count me in.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not.
Some of these Roger Moore Bond movies at the movie theater. That's what we need.
I'm afraid what they would do. I shouldn't say I'm afraid because I would still go see them. Is they would release like Goldfinger or something like that, or release some of those Connery ones, or even re-release a Daniel Craig one or something like that, like Casino Royale, like the 20th anniversary next year or something like that. Maybe they would like re-release that. I just don't see them releasing like Roger Moore ones, but it'd be so awesome if they did.
It would be. Maybe when we get closer to a new one coming out. We'll
Yeah.
have to wait and see. But great show, my man. Very awesome. Why don't you let everyone know about that article from that you've dropped?
So it was something I wrote a little while back, but it was on a Charlie Chaplin film, not the first sound film he did. The first sound film the first full sound film he did was in 1940. That was A Great Dictator, and a lot more people know that film. But 7 years later, he took a 7-year hiatus, and he came back with a movie, Monsieur Verdoux, where he played what they call a Bluebeard, who basically married women and would murder them for their money. Kind of very out of character for what because he was always a tramp character. This was the first movie he wasn't the tramp character. It's a very, very dark comedy. It was written by, it wasn't written, but it was a story that Orson Welles kind of came up with. But he met with Orson Welles and got the rights to it and made the movie, and it really flew under the radar. People didn't receive it very well because it wasn't Charlie Chaplin as I was used to seeing him. So it didn't do very well, but I think over the years it's garnered a little more respect. And I just kind of wrote a piece on that because I thought it was kind of important. I'm a big Charlie Chaplin guy. I've been since my early 20s. And that's one of those movies that kind of gets forgotten. And I don't think it should, because it's the way it's filmed and the chance he took to do something like that, deviate from something, taking 7 years off for one thing, and then completely deviating from what people were used to go a different direction, I thought was kind of brave of him to do. But it didn't really work out. However, he did make a couple movies after that. He made Limelight's an incredible movie that people should watch. It's a very it gives you the feels, that's for sure. That was made 1952, so that was made 5 years after Monsieur Verdoux came out. Much different tone to it. But Monsieur Verdoux is a pretty cool dark comedy, but it is a comedy. So there's a lot of comedic, moments in it. Martha Ray's in it, and she was, a very physical comedian in her own right at that time. But that's something I felt I should write about because no one's ever really heard of it.
No.
So I hope it kind of enlightened people on kind of what it was and what it is, and we'll take a chance to go see it. It's an easy watch. And the ending is dark, but it's prominent.
We've talked a lot about Chaplin. Honestly, even right there when you were like the first talking Chaplin, I was going to say The Great Dictator, and you've been like, yes, very good, and I've been like, I only know that because of you. And that's even those early movies, just very interesting stuff. Please check out his article. Very awesome. This Friday we will be back on At the Show. We're doing a 4 and 4 on Brad Dourif, the actor who's been in so many movies like One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest, all the way to the voice of Chucky. So see what we're
And
going to be.
getting his ass beaten to death by Gene Hackman in the barber shop.
Oh yeah, in the amazing Mississippi Burning. Yep,
Yeah.
that's a classic role right there. But check into that and see what we got cooking this Friday. Go back and check out the last hookup on music. We did some really awesome stuff there. Check out the Reel to Reel with Cotton and Yumper. They talked a movie that I haven't really ever watched before, but I should watch. It's the Toxic Avenger. They just came out with a brand new one of those. So watch that,
Yeah,
check
the
that out.
chroma version's awesome.
Yeah, I've watched very, very little of that, so I should probably get to that. But in 2 weeks, we will be back with an amazing titled James Bond film. And we can't wait to see you then, my man. So we'll talk soon, everyone out there.
And I
Take
would
care.
say definitely check out what Yumper's done, because he's put a lot of work into this for this 31 days. It's pretty awesome what
Oh
he's done.
yeah, don't forget that. 31
Read
days of horror.
those, watch those, and I would say to tell people, like, take advantage of stuff like Pluto TV, because like that 24-hour Twilight Zone is just awesome. And whenever a James Bond movie comes out, they put like 24-hour James Bond stuff on there. There's a lot of cool stuff on there you didn't realize, and it's with a horror month. There's a lot of good horror. But
Yeah.
personally, like I said, I like Twilight Zone. So
What was I watching last night? Was on the movie channel. Was Invaders from Mars, like the 1950s version. Just real cool old sci-fi.
there's real good 50s B movies on there too. Like,
Yeah, I mean
real
I love that stuff. So yeah, check out all of that, and we'll see you soon in 2 weeks. Everyone out there, take care. Bye.